Hey Ricardo, so great to see these essays from you. Great work. It's so important to get feedback for your writing for IELTS. So well done. Why don't we get straight into this correction so we can see what you wrote today. Okay, the topic is doing an enjoyable activity with a child can develop better skills and imagination than reading. Okay, let's see what you had to say. Certainly, reading is one of the most important activities for a child's. Okay, here you need possessive, apostrophe S, for a child's development, yet there are innumerous sorts, S, of essential skills not stimulated by just reading. I strongly believe that the practice of enjoyable activities. Now, you have to be really careful here. It's really interesting. This is something everybody has trouble with in IELTS writing. But look at this. It's the practice of. So really your lead noun here is practice. Therefore, you need a singular verb. The practice, blah, 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 is. Okay, this is irrelevant here, so don't be misled by it. The practice of enjoyable activities is as important as reading for a comprehensible, I think that's what you mean here. Oh, no, wait, you don't mean comprehensible. You mean comprehensive. For comprehensive child development is what you're really looking for here. This essay will discuss both views using examples of video games and sports to demonstrate points and support arguments. Okay, so far so good. Reading has innumerable, I believe is the adjective and not innumerous. I'll double check, but I am fairly convinced that it's innumerable. Nevertheless, playing video games can develop skills that would be impossible to develop just by reading alone. This is because playing on consoles, this is because while playing on consoles, you need something like this, like by playing on consoles, while playing on consoles, but as it is on its own grammatically, it doesn't work. So this is because while playing on consoles, a child can develop specific skills such as spatial awareness and not reflexive cognitive, which is not actually, it doesn't really exist. I think what you mean is good reflexes, or perhaps you mean cognitive reflexes. You mean something else, but certainly not what has been written here, because grammatically it just doesn't really sit correctly. Okay, for example, recent studies by Harvard, careful with your spelling, show that children playing 2 hours a week on consoles, you don't need to come here, outperform. Why is it outperform? Because children. That's your lead noun. Children outperform their counterparts, S, by 20% in psychometric tests. Therefore, the habit of playing video games stimulates children to progress in areas not reached by reading. Okay, really please be careful with some of this grammar. Secondly, different sorts, S, of activities other than reading can develop physical and mental skills. This is because physical activities, especially sports, introduce new dynamics such as competition and cognitive skills. The British Sport Council reported that communication and leadership skills careful here, this is another grammatical error, are more highly developed. Why? Because this is an adjective, you need an adverb to modify it, you need highly. But then you want to show comparative, so it has to be are, more highly developed. Okay, in people that practice sports regularly. Therefore, there are innumerable activities that work as a functional complement for reading. Okay, that's nice. I like that ending sentence. To conclude from the examples and arguments given, although reading plays an important role in the development of child skills. Okay, fine. There are benefits for that with the practice of delightful activities. Therefore, sports and video games should be implemented in a child's life or in children's life here. Not only for pleasure, but also for educational purposes, with a plural here. Okay, it's not just one educational purpose, but it's actually several. All right, so moving on to your second essay now. Let's see what you had to say about this. Communication is less between family members of late. Do you agree or disagree? Okay. Now, careful, please. It's really to what extent with a T. I thought in the first time it was just a typo, but this is now the second time you've done it, so really be careful. It's important because it's the wrong formation of the word. It actually has a different meaning, so be careful. not because it's important in the task, but if you actually had to write it in your answer and you wrote it wrong, it could be a problem. All right, moving on. The issue of whether the emergence, now I want you to look up the difference between emergence and emergency. Emergence. No, I can't say this correctly. So let's try it again. The issue of whether the emergency, that's one word, and the emergence is a separate word. Look them both up. You'll see that the word you actually want is emergence without the Y, but instead with just an E. Okay, so the issue of whether the emergence of new technologies okay, this is tricky. Check out what happens here. Okay, so you've got this verb impacts. Now, the rule typically is that when you have a verb, the object has to come directly after it, and you shouldn't separate the verb from its object. They should be directly next to each other. But you've got here this whole thing, positively or negatively in people communication. So there's tons of things happening here. Let's see how we can fix all those things. So the issue of whether the emergence of new technologies impacts people's communication positively or negatively. That's how we would do it. With people, apostrophe S, communication, and then positively or negatively. That's much better sentence order. It's much more natural sounding in English. Okay, so keep it in mind. You never want to separate your verb, which is impact, from your subject, which is people's communication. Okay, so keep that in mind. I strongly believe that the internet, it's always the internet. We always put an article, the, in front of this word. So I strongly believe that the internet and other tools are responsible for improvements, not only in the quality, but also in the quantity of communication level. This essay will discuss both issues using examples of social media. It's already plural, so you don't have to make it plural here. Just get rid of the S, because the singular, as it's a Latin root word, is medium. So media is actually its plural. So this essay will discuss both issues using examples of social media and Skype to demonstrate points and support arguments. Okay, let's move on with this. Let's see. Firstly, improvements in communication quality are an awareness of young generations. All right, this is a little strange. I'm not really sure what you mean. It's not something that right away someone reads and says, oh, okay, that's clear. What do you mean it's an awareness? That's where the problem lies. That doesn't really make sense. Okay, so it is mainly because their higher commitment to, you have a commitment to something. Two different types of social media, again, no S. Okay, it is mainly because their higher commitment to different types of social media, get rid of this, makes their communication easier and faster. You're probably wondering why I made these changes. So it's commitment, that's this, it's a noun, it's singular, this is your subject. It makes, so it has to be singular as well. For example, LinkedIn, Instagram, and Facebook are important tools for the creation of new forms of relationships. Therefore, if our community engages more in this activity, the number of professional and private relationships would increase constantly. Okay. Sorry, I'm just going to reread it now, hold on a minute. You haven't really talked about family relationships at all. You're talking about social media. You're talking about professional relationships. You're talking about Instagram. Where is the family in this? You've kind of scratched the topic, but you haven't really dealt with it. So you need to say how all of these things affect the family and the family's communication. It's really important to your task response, okay? So while you have some interesting ideas here, you're not really developing the part of the question that the task has asked you to, which is communication in family members. You haven't really totally addressed that. All right, let's go on to the second paragraph. Secondly, technology advances support the idea that currently not only the quality of communication is big, well, you can't say the quality is bigger, you say the quality is greater. But also the quantity of it. This is basically because the use of communication apps You mean like the internet? I think that's what you mean. Like the internet without wide. Wide, I'm sorry, I'm confused here. Let me read it again. This is basically because the use of communication apps, likewise, the wide internet, okay. Rather than saying likewise here, let's use a different expression. Let's use as well as. All right, I think this is really what you're trying to say. Likewise doesn't do that job here. So let's replace it with as well as and read the sentence again. So this is basically because the use of communication apps as well as wide internet access allows though, because as well as has really weird grammar. I would suggest looking it up. People to share their thoughts more often. For example, WhatsApp and Skype allow us to make a meeting anywhere and anytime on demand. Therefore, the time spent, with a T not a D, for communication has been increasing over the last years. Okay, again, you're talking about general communication and you keep making these references to like the workplace and stuff, but that's not what the question has asked you, and it's so important to really focus on what the direct question of what they're asking you. And here it's family members. So this would unfortunately really affect your task response. Okay? I really would suggest underlining all the keywords, and here it would have to be between family members. You haven't really talked about that. You've scratched the surface in your first paragraph. In the second paragraph, you really haven't talked about it. I mean, again, in a general sort of way, but certainly not as far as family members are concerned, okay? All right, so let's move on to your conclusion. To conclude from the examples and arguments given, I firmly disagree that communication is less between family members and colleagues, although face-to-face contact has been decreasing over the last few years. It is predicted by social analysts that it will be the new pattern of communication over the next decades. All right, that was lovely. It was perfect. But I want you to think a little bit about what I said about your task response, okay? Nice job with these. Keep on writing. Keep on submitting your essays to get feedback, and I will be waiting here, looking forward to getting more of them so we can help you progress in your IELTS preparation.